Welcome, everyone. This is the Scroll Node program for the Kenya and Tanzanian founders. Welcome very much, Machuche from NedaPay. I see Gideon, I see Tim and Pablo. Welcome very much. So this session is by the team from SafiraTech, led by Muma, who will introduce herself. I believe Muma knows, I think, a number of the founders here, and she'll be taking us through a very important topic on team chemistry or co-founder chemistry, also around equity, vesting, and structuring around founder dynamics as well. So Muma, feel free to now kick things off. Welcome very much.
Thank you, Matu. Hi, everyone. So lovely to be here with all of you. I am Fane Kemuma, as Matu has introduced me. A little bit of background. So I'm a founder of SafiraTech, which is a consulting company, and we do legal, financial, and growth advisory for startups, both in fintech, Web2, Web3. So today's session is on co-founder chemistry. We'll talk about a couple of things. One of them is the conversation and co-founder dynamics. We'll touch on cracking like the equity code. Also, we'll touch on vesting. And then lastly is navigating like conflicts between founders. So yeah, that is it. After the session, I will provide a couple of documents for your own review. Yeah, and if you are having those conversations with the founders right now, I understand that most of the cohort has an MVP. I am not sure how many of you have co-founders or are looking for co-founders. So yeah. Yes. So firstly, I'd like to understand a couple of things from the cohort. Feel free to just raise your hand or send a reaction. How many of you have co-founders currently? None. Let's see, Guinea
I guess
hands.
there's several. Blockhook,
Yeah.
I guess. NedaPay as well. Yeah, Blockhook.
Also guessing Carbon-Seek.
Yeah, Carbon-Seek too.
Okay. So firstly, I'll start with questions because I want this session to be very interactive. So feel free to ask me any question. I know that the co-founder discussion is a bit like, people feel like it's a bit odd. But yeah, you have to have those conversations. So anyone in this call who's tried to have a founder equity chat, and how awkward was that? You can feel free to raise your hand and mute and just give me a slight description of how that went.
Well, can I go first? Well, I'm not from within the cohort, but I guess the first time I did that, it was awkward because I didn't understand most of the terms. So it was a bit confusing for me. Yeah, I'm not sure I completely get it today. I'm just hoping I'm not, getting the short end of the stick. That's all.
Okay,
Maybe
so what's up? Okay, continue.
Yeah. Obviously, we get to have those kind of conversation, and they're very difficult because most people feel that everybody is bringing in a lot of value into the business, and therefore they need to have some sort of equity. But I think over the years we've got a hang of it, and mostly how we do for most of our businesses is we do a 1 year clip with 4 years of vesting, and we mainly do it as a KPI vesting. And what we say is, as much as we're coming as a founder, we define critical functions within the business that each one of us has to take up, and then we do KPIs, because the core mandate of a founder is to bring the IP and then commercialize the IP. Commercializing the IP means that you have to work in the business, and essentially you are working in the business for free because you're contributing sweat equity. At the end of the day, you're not likely to get paid every month. So we try as much as possible to have a very fair conversation, which is very difficult to have, but we should say that we're gonna have equal shares, right? So we're gonna have equal shares, but then we will get some shares on the first anniversary after the cliff. So we get that, and then we vest the rest based on the performance of our KPIs each quarter. And then we go ahead to elect a board. So the founders become the guys who make all decisions within the business, but then we have an independent board, which we are members of, but we appoint 2 guys who are very independent, who becomes the chair. So the objective is to make sure that none of our issues actually go to the board at all, because the board can make decisions either way. But the board is the one that actually oversights our KPIs to make sure that our vesting schedules are honored, so that if one of us is not meeting their vesting schedule, then they're not able to vest their shares. So that's how we do it, to bring some sort of fairness, and then we build a whole ESOP around it. We try to build some sort of ESOP. We don't register the ESOP because it's too expensive to register trust for that purpose, but we put aside some more shares, which now could go into, either the founders earning more shares because of how they have performed well, or incentivizing other people that we may want to bring on board. To just bring fairness, we just say equal shares, just to make it very fair, because obviously it's very difficult to say who gets more and why, and we are all founders anyway. But at some point also we have to recognize people who originated the idea, and then someone came in a year later or 2 years later. Obviously that cannot be equal, and we have to be able to justify that kind of value. But at the end of the day, vesting allows everybody to feel like, okay, whatever contribution I think I can make, then I can be able to do it. So you earn your shares, and then ESOPs can even earn you more, right? And then if we start paying money, then equity could be one of the ways we pay if the business is not able to pay at that particular point. So that's how we do have those kind of discussions. Safira.
Thanks, Gideon. That was very extensive. It seems like you've been able to just have those conversations at once. A follow-up question is, how many people did you go through before you got a co-founder that matches your personality and also the values of your company?
Yes, again, how long did it take?
Yeah, how long did it take to get your co-founder that you have right now?
Yeah, so of course I have 2 businesses. I have one which is NomaChain. We have 4 co-founders in NomaChain, and then we have BlockUp, where we are 3 co-founders. So in NomaChain, that was a journey that we've walked with those 4 co-founders for the last, I think, 7-8 years. So there are people that we've met, we've been able to interact in the course of us doing business. We've built friendships and relationships. The same guys, some of those guys are the ones now we have in BlockUp, and that took us. That has taken us now, we've been known each other for the last 4 years. So we understand the capabilities of each one of us. So for example, one guy is very good in customer service. So he knows how to deal with clients. He can talk to clients for a very long period of time. Myself, I'm a business analyst. I don't love talking to clients at all. I'm very technical. Anything I explain to a client, they don't get it. I mean, I'll confuse you with whatever it is that I'm selling. So we know what my capabilities are, but I build all the models, I build the algorithms, I build the business model, I build the strategy. Then we have the CTO, who is very good in tech, and he can be able to manage these guys. So we complement each other that way. And of course, now again, we were very strategic to bring on board a female co-founder, because obviously we know having a female co-founder, that gives us an edge when it comes to attracting capital into the business. And therefore, this is someone, again, we've known for the last 8 years at least. And when they came in, we know what our capabilities are. So it was very easy just to bring them on board. But I will tell you, I've been in a forum in Rwanda where they put together guys from Ethiopia, Kenya, and Rwanda, 50 guys, right? So these are the best entrepreneurs across Africa. And they are there for 3 months. And their main goal is to just get a co-founder. that's the success. You get funded $10,000 if you come out with an idea with a co-founder, someone you've never known, you've never met, and you've never whatever. So I've seen the struggle that a lot of people have to go through to try and get relationships that are gelling, but it's so difficult because it's mostly about chemistry. It's not about functions and roles alone, but it's also about chemistry, work ethics, and how people see life, and also the other things that people are going through life. Because I can tell you, like, if you have a co-founder and you're working for no pay when there's no money for you to work for, these are people who have families, they have people to fend for, they have all these kind of things, they have temperaments, they have emotions and stuff like that. So you really need to be more than just about complementing each other in functions and roles, but you need to be friends who understand each other, friends who can be able to stand there for each other. So that's how I think it could take up to 3-6 months, maybe years, to build those kind of relationships. If you really want to have co-founders that you can be with for better or worse, because it's for better or worse. Because this can be thick, you know, and at some point you may get a VC who wants to get you out and is doing divide and rule. So you really have to be very good friends. You really have to know each other really well. So I think that could take years to build a good co-working relationships, in my view.
Thank you, Gideon. Thank you, Gabe. So I'd like to call out maybe Hillary Collins. Do you have a co-founder? How has the journey been? Anyone? Machuche, Nedape, Web3 clubs as well.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
So currently, I don't have a co-founder. Yeah, but probably looking for one somewhere, somehow. The journey has been, no, but I'll say there's the ups and downs, of course, especially with this legal stuff. But probably my co-founder will be someone in legal, so that I give all that pressure to him or her. Yeah.
So while you're looking for a co-founder, what are those, let's say, personality? What are the things you're looking for?
I would say, I mean, their work ethic, that would be one. They have to be really knowing what they're doing. And also, and I'm probably also looking for, you know, a friend. Biashara inakuwa ngumu. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. So listening to the both of you, we have two different extremes. We have one founder who has, Gideon, who has like really thought this through. He's thought about like the kinds of people he's looking for, the roles, also their personality, TC, and Collins, who you're currently looking for a co-founder. And I'm guessing that you're representing both extremes and everyone falls in between or either or. So first thing that we have touched on is that these conversations are very difficult. Personally, I have recently like onboarded a founder, and one thing that stood out to me is basically her personality together with her quality of work. So considering that a person who's like into sales, into business development, I'm not a person who's meant to like head execution and also the financial side. I do have a bit of experience with that, but I needed someone who's understands like financial analysis together with being able to build a relationship with them. And also I know that this is someone who we can have difficult conversations with. And one thing that kind of came out to me when I was speaking to one of my mentors is if you are the person who started the company, you really have to not be too attached to your co-founder, because at any point, like life happens, as Gideon was telling us. People need, you know, to feed their families. They might get a better job. So in such scenarios, like what do you do as maybe the CEO, as a person who has this vision for your project, your company? So being able to kind of go with the flow, and also in case anything happens, you always have, like, you've thought about it. If at a point whereby you guys break up, you've thought about such a situation. When a conflict comes up, you've thought about that as well. So when it comes to equity, this is a difficult conversation when it comes to founders, especially if you're onboarding someone. So the first thing is the concern that will you get the fair value of the equity, which correlates with whatever value that you're bringing in the company. Because in the beginning, a lot of us are struggling. And maybe you don't have enough cash. And in this instance, you'd be like, I only have equity to give you. So this is what we call sweat equity. Just a moment. We call this sweat equity, basically exchanging the sweat that I put into the company for equity. So how exactly do you have to split these shares, considering that you're the one who started it, you have 100% of the shares. So the easiest thing that people do, most founders will just go 50-50, as Gideon mentioned. But what if you bring a third co-founder? What if you need someone who's technical in this instance? So how do you split that? Will you consider both of you giving your equity, or will it be like a situation where it's 60, 20, 20%? So those are the great divide when it comes to having a co-founder. So how exactly do you even split this equity? You may consider like their skills. You may consider basically risk-based. If this person is bringing capital, that's risk. They are putting their money and they're able to like, carry the burden of this risk together with you. And also how exactly you're going to split this two. If it's a person who's bringing capital, you might be in that discussion, in that negotiation, you might give them a bit more equity as opposed to like a 20%. So those are buy-ins. And then the other thing that Gideon mentioned was considering something called a vesting schedule. How many of you know what that is on this call? Can raise your hands.
I could try. I'm not sure. Based on the contract that I didn't understand, it was something about your shares being released after a certain period of time, depending on your inputs, right? Yeah.
Okay. So Rosalind, what you're describing is a vesting schedule, but on milestone based. Yeah. Anyone else before I get into the description? All right, so to save on time, so basically it's basically a timeline. It's a schedule of a timeline whereby someone is able to get their equity in small portions until like that period of time ends. So one thing that Gideon mentioned is the usual vesting period, whereby it's like 1 year cliff, and then Gideon, just confirm with me whether you have any percentage that defaults to someone after the 1 year cliff.
Yeah, we do 10% on the first anniversary of the cliff, and then we vest the rest over the 3 or 4 years.
That is how much percentage again?
10.
Okay, 10%. So basically what this is that after the 1 year, you don't get anything, any amount of equity after the 1 year finishes, and in that 1 year until it ends. And then after that period is over, it's triggered so that you can get that 10% after that 1 year. So the rest of the 90% of your shares will be distributed to you per month or per year, depending on the schedule, until the period of 4 years ends. Any question, nimepoteza mtu, let me know. Or am I getting too technical? Rosaline, do you understand that term now?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's more clear. It's actually not that complex, really. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. And you might ask yourself, like, what's the essence of us having this vesting schedule? So the first thing is, I'll give you a very interesting example whereby let's use dating, like when you meet someone, you don't give them the keys to your house at once. So it's the same scenario whereby you're bringing in anyone in your company. You have to put a vesting schedule. You have to like give it time whereby you're able to protect the equity of the company according to how long this person stays with the company. Are they performing as per their KPIs? If any case where they're not, you're able to just give them the percentage of equity that has been handed to them using the vesting schedule, and then the rest might default back to the company. So yeah, the first thing it's important for is basically to protect the company, to protect your interests, protect your equity. Yeah, and also we can give the Gideon.
Just a question around that. So what's the legal mechanism of being able to enforce that in Kenya legally? What's the best way to do it?
To enforce what part exactly? The vesting schedule or the return of
the vesting? How to enforce the vesting? What's the best way to do it legally?
Okay. The best way to trigger it or the best way to enforce it?
To enforce it.
Okay. So basically it's through the agreements. Do you have a current agreement with your employees, your co-founder?
Yes, so let me give you a scenario, Safira, sorry, Kerry. Yeah? So vesting is not recognized under the company's law in Kenya, right? So really, whatever agreements you have with your co-founders is null and void to that extent that if you go to court and this guy was owed in maybe 30% shares of the business on the CR12, it doesn't matter that they're not supposed they're vesting or not vesting. Number two, if you wanted to legally revert shares back to the company, they have to sign. Right, so they have to sign. So you can, and there's no way you can do it even on eCitizen. There's no way you can be able to do that. You get it? So what's the legal practical way of doing it vis-a-vis two things, Safira? Number one, that this guy wants to feel that I have my 30%, even if we have an agreement on the side that says I'm actually vesting it. And the alternative, which is to tell him you have an agreement, but you're not on the CR12, so you only get your shares once you invest them on the CR12. So how do you balance those two interests vis-a-vis the law itself? So how do you enforce it legally and practically?
Okay, thanks for the question, Gideon. So firstly, you mentioned something, the CR12, which is used to basically track the ownership in a company, especially when you're starting. You're always given a CR12 once you register your company. So this is in an instant survey. So what is required, Gideon, is, especially in fintech companies, in startups, you're required to have a cap table with you. So this is just, the easiest one is an Excel sheet, which I'll provide to everyone, or let me try just sharing my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen. Yeah, okay. So this is a cap table. This is just an Excel sheet template that we have as SafiraTech. And on this, it's used to just track how your shareholding will change. So for example, it's this. Trying to scroll. So we have, considering that you can't keep on like updating your cap table every single month with everyone who comes to your current cap table because of what? Because of the constant back and forth with eCitizen, you might just use a cap table to just have to track whatever changes are coming. Let's say if you have a new founder. Okay. Basically, we have, in case you have like, it was only one founder. Sorry. Anyway, in this instance, you had one founder who had 100%, but then over time, you brought in a second founder who has 27.5%. If you input a vesting schedule, it's able to calculate over time. We're trying to move this. To calculate over time, like the changes that are happening together with the number of shares that are vesting each and every month. So in this instance, we have 5 months vested shares. Basically, it's just to give you like, in this instance, in month 1, you might have like only 100,000 shares that have vested. So this cap table will be able to track that. After maybe 2 years, or by the time that this person is leaving, they have, for example, like 500,000 shares. This is able to be reflected on your internal company cap table, but then it is on your owners, Gideon, in this instance with the Kenyan registry, to project that. If you want to do it every year, if you want to do it every month, or by the time that this person is leaving, you can always go back to the registry and change your CR12. That's how you enforce it. Is this clear? Do you have any questions?
No, it's okay. So essentially what you're saying is you don't give anybody any shares on the CR12 until they vest them. So, okay, you said I will register you on the CR12 every year.
Yeah.
Every transfer you the shares that I need to transfer you. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
because the CMA, Capital Markets Act, actually requires you to update this information with the registry. So internally, it depends with your own, let's say, company rules, or the guidelines that you have with your employees or with anyone who's working with the company. Just state that we will be updating our CR12 every single month. But then we have jurisdictions like Delaware, whereby you don't have to update it every single time. Like it's like the regulations understand the different changes that happen in fintech or in IT companies, and how like they give you the leeway not to consistently like update it. But in such an instance whereby you've been taken to court, remember that the contract is usually the ones that dictate the functions within the company. So first of all, like the judge or the magistrate that you're going before, you'll have to attach the contract that was signed. So they are not, like in this instance, if a co-founder has, you promise them 30%, but only 5% of those shares have vested, you can always go back to the contract to state that this is implied. This was implied in the contract that they signed. So basically the implementation will be towards the 5% as opposed to the 30%. Is that clear? Is it too technical? Or are we on the same page?
Thank you. Very good.
Awesome. Okay.
So you mentioned Delaware, Safira. So in Delaware, you only update your memos, right? But I didn't see anywhere you have to register that anywhere. So it's only on your internal memos that those become the shareholders every time you file your returns.
Yeah, they have to actually file a document with each new person in the cap table so that it can be recognized to the registry.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions before we leave vesting and go to conflict resolution?
Well, not exactly a question, but I don't know. I think I would say for someone new to the whole equity field, it might be a bit technical. So if you have any resources that we can check after the session, that would really be helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. So Thank you, Rosalind. So we have a couple of articles we've written on equity, like the do's and don'ts. Additionally, if you'd like to have a consulting session with our team as well, we are available. Because cap tables actually, like founders agreements, cap tables, you need to be. And I think this is like a conversation that I've been asked, like a question I've been asked so many times. It's like, what's the importance of having a lawyer to do this for you? Why not just go to ChatGPT for it to just like give me a template and then that's fine? It's because you do not understand the technicalities. You do not understand, like someone who has no background in this cannot understand like how a trigger event can happen. How, for example, what does it mean if you're to bring in an investor you're going to give shares to? Like what happens to your dilution? You know, I think those kinds of conversations we'll touch on them later on in the program. But Rosalind, if you need just for us to take you through step by step, we have a founders agreement that we can look at later. Awesome. Okay, so lastly, we have something called conflict resolution. And with this, there's a lot of like founder drama that happens because it's like, what happens in the situation whereby you haven't signed a co-founder agreement, but then you split up? Or in the instance whereby one of the co-founders would like to pivot the business model, what happens in such situations? These things, like if you're not in agreement with your co-founder, and then in the end you end up, which is you know, like you have issues, you have conflicts. So how exactly do you go around that? Gideon, since you've been very, very vocal in this conversation, in an instance whereby you have a conflict with your founders, how do you go about it?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, Safira, one thing that we've done is to form a board, an independent board, that is the one that resolves the founder issues that we may have. So obviously founders have conflicting ideas of how they need to run the business or stuff like that. So founders essentially are the ones who run the business. They're the ones who decide, make decisions on how things go. But if they're not able to agree, they always refer those matters to the board, which is the neutral arbiter. So you make sure that once you constitute a board, you have independent directors, who also one of them becomes the chair, who get to make the final decision on whatever. For example, you may have a lot of disputes around KPIs. KPIs is an area that a lot of disputes will arise because you always say, I've not met my KPIs because it's also not available. You didn't do what you're supposed to do on time, or you're the one who made me not do, and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, the board becomes the one that actually makes the final decision. And what you do as founders is to make sure that you agree most of the time, never to go back to the board. So we've not had a scenario where we have to go to court at all. So we've not gone to court, but we allow the board to solve most of the matters that we may not be agreeing upon, or we may not be seeing eye to eye. So we consider a board of 5 always, just so that it's always able to make those kind of decisions for us. And then we have to comply. Of course, sometimes tempers flare, but there are consequences now. There are consequences. For example, if your shares are vesting, then, you know, if I don't work because Nimekasirika or something of that sort, I lose my shares, or I don't get paid, or I could be fired as an exec, and I only get to maintain what I invested. So there are those consequences that always keep you in line and in check, even when you don't feel like you need to work. So for us, having that independent board is what has worked for us. We've not had to go to court. Obviously, we don't want to go to court at all. But what I've seen is once you start making a lot of money in the business, then tempers really flare up a lot, because one of our businesses is really making some good chunks, and now you see a lot of interest on, for example, who gets paid what, how much money is paid, when is this money paid, what time do we do liquidations, especially because we are running a token that just reached over $3 million market cap. So a lot of taxes that have been made out of that. So you start seeing those kind of interests. So again, when you have a proper legal document, a founding agreement or a shareholder agreement, you always fall back to that, because we realized that we had made some very grave mistakes, especially around vesting, as you said. We give people shares, and then in the contract it says these guys were supposed to vest, but they already hold the shares. So, and then some of the guys have not been working for some time, and now you need to go back to them and tell them you guys have not been meeting your mandate, and therefore you need to revert back those shares because you need to employ other people. So those kind of teething problems then become an issue. So the first thing I would say is get a legal officer. As you said, maybe ChatGPT may not help you, but get a good legal officer or a company secretary who can assist you to come up with proper documentation, and then put up a proper board for enforcement purposes and continuous monitoring. And then so that when shit hits the fan, then obviously you're able to go back to those particular documents. So like for the compliance officer we have, you always tell us, every time you're drafting a contract, you look at it from the worst case scenario. So just say, what if everything goes haywire? What's the worst that could happen? You get it, right? So you start catering for those scenarios on your agreements early on, so that every time that becomes the guiding framework for the board to make certain decisions into the future.
Okay. All right, anyone who has issues with co-founders, wants to think about it, I'd recommend Gideon in this cohort. And well, if you have someone within the program who's explaining this to you. I'd like to ask, not here, but I needed another input from someone we haven't heard from. Dennis or Tim.
Yeah, hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so at Expendi, I don't have a co-founder as of yet. So it's still a work in progress. Lots of we're still very like early in what we're doing. We're currently even doing like mostly research about the product we're working on. So it's a case of trying to see whether what we are building will work for the users we are targeting. So at the moment, I've not yet gotten a co-founder, but hopefully, if our research goes well and we see it's something viable, might consider bringing on board someone to help us out. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else in the call? Hilda, do you want to share?
Sure. Maybe I could share something. So just to reiterate what Gideon had mentioned, MEMATs and the founder-co-founder agreements are very necessary. Having a board as well. You at some point you definitely need someone who is neutral or someone who acts in the best interest of the company, because when you look at the Companies Act, part of the duties of the board of directors or of a director in a company is to act in the best interests of the company with regard to their skills, and to apply their skills, of course, in the best interest of the company. So whenever you're not sure of yourselves or you're scaling to a very huge part, say, as Gideon had said, you're becoming very profitable, definitely look into having a board of directors. It could come in many ways. It could be advisors. It could just be there are different people you can onboard onto your board of directors, and some of them could be there out of goodwill. Some will definitely require equity and other things. But yeah, I think it's very nice to really check on your MEMATs and your founder-co-founder agreements. And just to mention, I think during incorporation, most people go with the standard articles and memorandum of association that are provided, but also it's good to get a legal person to go through the article of association, which is more in detail and in-depth, and to help you customize, especially to the needs of your business, considering most of the companies that are being incorporated in Web3 have a lot of other stuff that's not really traditional, such as, tokenomics and other factors. But yeah, I really do love what Gideon was putting forward.
Thank you for that wonderful response, Hilda. Okay, so we've been able to touch on like a lot. But lastly, we'll just do a highlight of the key lessons that we've had during this session on success. So the first thing I would mention is you have to talk clearly, to document, you have to have your fund agreements, you have to have your company agreements, your MEMAs, and also your company certificate, but also your MEMAs are very, very important because in the instance whereby you do not have a shareholding agreement that dictates how the shares are supposed to be handled within the company, you can always come back to what's, as Hilda's mentioned. Secondly, we've touched, yeah? Anyone who's speaking?
Sorry, Mama, I have a question. How many co-founders should one have? Like, is it just like a technical co-founder? Maybe, what do you call it? Maybe there's the marketing department, there's sales, there's. So what do you suggest? We start with the technical founder and then go step by step as we add people. How many shares should we like give out? Hello?
I'm here, I hear you,
About my
Tim.
internet. Oh, you can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So,
So your
for instance, Gideon has like, he has a few co-founders, but most of us either have like one co-founder or zero co-founders. So what would you suggest? Like,
Pablo, I'll come to you next. So for this, it's entirely up to you. And at the sake of sounding like a lawyer, it depends. So some people would prefer to just have like the vision to themselves, basically not have a co-founder. You're a generalist, you can do sales, you're a hustler, you're the CTO, etc. But then you have another scenario whereby you'd prefer to have a co-founder. There's no limit to how many co-founders you can have. Some people can go up to 7, but then the share split becomes difficult. So you have to take into consideration a couple of things. Number one, your own skill set. Is it enough to basically move the company from like an MVP? You've built the code, you've built everything, you've taken it to market. Are you able to like take it to the next level whereby you're getting revenue? Do you have skills for marketing, etc.? If you don't, you have to look at what is missing within the company and what other skills do you need? So if you go based on that question, you might actually look at one co-founder who's very good at business, they're very good at execution, that is marketing, they're very good at doing maybe strategy for growth. So if that is in-house in one person, you can definitely go with one co-founder. But then if you need another specialty, maybe a hardware engineer or someone else who doesn't have the skills, you can always like bring in 2 or 3. It depends with where you are, what you need, and also what the business needs. Does that answer your question, Tim?
yeah.
Awesome. We had.
Can I add to that? Sorry. Just to add to that, I think it's necessary to realize that most of the tech startups require 3 major things, which is regulatory expertise, technical expertise, and then the business growth aspect. So as Muma had said, break down the needs of the business, and then from there, choose the expertise that you want within your team. And another thing to just consider as well, there's one quote about friendship that flies around a lot. Don't call everyone your friend. There's someone who could be an acquaintance. There's someone who could be, you could call, what should I call? I've forgotten other names of friends, but yeah, you can definitely find ways of filling in the skill gap without necessarily not sabotaging, but diluting the value of your company or the value of your shares or giving out too much. But in the case that you do not have the ability to, then it's usually more advisable to just onboard and now give ownership as payment.
Definitely agree to that. Thanks for the addition, Hilda. So we had a question from Pablo.
Hi, guys. Hi, ladies. I'm curious to know your thoughts on Ricardian contracts and being, Web3 cohort. What are the pros and cons of having your governance on chain? So all those vested things, why not put them on a smart contract? Assuming, every founder can read it. Yeah, curious to know your thoughts on that. And if that has ever been executed in Kenya, could we get an example of that smart contract and see how it panned out?
Okay, I'll let Hilda take this one.
Yeah,
Hello?
so what
Hi,
you have to... Okay, you want to go
Sorry.
first? Okay, sure, you can
No,
go
I just
first.
wanted to tell Pablo that Bondley is working on something similar. So I'll share maybe a small video, a short video later on in the group.
Nice.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, nice. So one thing you have to understand is whatever decisions you make within a company, you have to make sure that they're legally binding. And the legally binding aspect of most of these decisions are found in legislation or are enforceable in contracts and all that. So major decisions and how they're enforced are usually in the articles of association. That's, of course, in regard to transfer of shares, how shares are handled, and most of the other major decisions. So again, goes back to the agreements that you have. As much as you can enforce them on chain, and you have other ways of enforcing them, as you had said, Ricardian contracts, you have to also make sure that they're legally enforceable outside the place where you're enforcing them. I think now a good example of this is DAO governance is very common, but then when you come to the legal side of it, you're not going to the government and telling them we have a DAO, they really don't care or don't want to know much about that. And I don't even think they have the knowledge skills to process that. So most of the times it's just, you may have your internal agreements, yes, but make sure that they're legally binding as provided for in law. Yeah. So in that aspect, again, just to add on it, the memats, you are given the freedom to define how your decisions operate in the memats, and now again in the founder-co-founder agreements. So if you can spell that out in your legal documents, then you can definitely enforce it using now the Ricardian contracts.
Sorry, quick one before. Is there any jurisdiction that you're aware of that actually recognizes smart contracts as legally binding?
Currently, none. Okay.
I've seen, what is it? Okay, you can check now. They have a website. So for them, they created company structure between DAOs and LLCs, and also the additional regulations. They built the whole system. So if you want to see an example of how smart contracts actually do apply in a jurisdiction, that's one of them. It's in the Marshall Islands, yes. Okay, we have a...
Oh, sorry. Just to add to what Pablo had said, I guess what we can say in terms of recognition of smart contracts as legally enforceable is the signing bit of it. And if that's the case, then I think the US is very developed. Most of these developed jurisdictions have provisions for that. Yeah, it's just sort of agreements. It's like the way when you're not able to agree with something on something with your boss, you send an email, or when you're confirming something. So in the same way, smart contracts are now being enforceable. But again, it still comes back to elements of a contract. If all elements of a contract are met within now the enforcement of the smart contract, then it's definitely legally enforceable.
All right. So additionally to the US jurisdiction, also look at the UK jurisdiction. Yeah. Lastly, we have a question from Uchi. I see a raised hand.
Yeah, so just contributing to that question about is it necessary to have a co-founder? So in my experience, I would say it is essential. I could give maybe two reasons. So yeah, so investors are looking at startups, product projects, obviously looking at the team. Having a co-founder shows that they're able to work with people. Also, my experience is that there's just something about working with someone else, right, or partners. It's difficult to explain the value of synergy. It's almost like you're juggling a ball and then the ball drops, someone else can pick it up. I really cannot emphasize how important that is, or just the power of bouncing ideas across different lines. I think that's something that you should not overlook. Like it's synergy is as a concept, as a philosophy is massive. Around smart contract enforceable agreements. It's true. A lot of these use cases are just coming up. DAOs are using them, but also there's a lot of challenges. Like DAOs are facing massive challenges with this specifically. So I'd say as long as you have a legally enforceable agreement, this should be sufficient for the most part. I'd say they would probably come in handy when you're dealing with matters that are actually enforceable on chain. So let's say liquidity decisions, maybe payments, things that can actually be enforced on chain. So with resources that are on chain that would then require smart contract enforceability, I think those would probably be the go-to for me regarding that.
Also, maybe just to add to what Ochieng is saying, the whole essence of having a contract is so that when you meet, or part of the essence of having a contract is when you get to a point where you're unable to come to a consensus on something, you can pull up and say, hey, we said this and you said yes. So at the end of the day, if you're able to prove that this was a yes, then it's definitely enforceable in courts. But who wants to go through the whole court process? So just make sure that it's easy to prove that there was a yes. Yeah, and it's easily recognizable by law.
Thank you, everyone. So we have 1 minute to the end of this session. So if you have any other questions, just send them on the Telegram group and we'll be able to just give you more details. Thank you so much for your time. Any question with the 1 minute that's left? Okay.
Can I add a comment?
Yeah.
With regards to co-founder, I just share quickly, there are two things that I look for: leadership and how people deal with crises. Those two are critical because work ethic is abundant in this Kenya of ours, especially Kanairo. But there's very few people who are good with dealing with people, and there are very few people who are good at navigating a crisis. So I just thought I'd add that. Thank you.
And conflict resolution.
100.
Just to add to the same. So looking for the perfect partner is like looking for the perfect wife or husband, whatever. And we all know that's like not a reality. So I think probably even other than conflict resolution, all these desirable attributes would be just like virtues like patience and what do you call it? Like when you can really handle that, like stamina, and just really just be there when things are going wrong, because the relationship will develop over time. So you're more looking for like resilience, stuff like that, like who can really storm a storm. So that's what I would look for.
That's true. 100% true. So yeah, consider it as a marriage, to be honest. But also I wish you all the best for those who are looking for founders. Now you know what to look for. For those that have founders and don't have documentation, we'll send you a couple of sources. That's a questionnaire together with a co-founder agreement that we have. You can always tweak it. You can always go with the template to your lawyer or whoever is looking at it for you. So that is it from Safira. One thing I will say, protect your startup from founder drama and promise to document, vest, and do investor due diligence and resolve like a pro. So that's it. Go forth and build fearlessly. Thanks for coming.